Do you feel that something invisible is blocking your blessings? There are forces you cannot see, but that are working against you at this very moment. Each unexplained obstacle, every tear shed without apparent reason, every door that closes when it should open, none of this is coincidence. The spiritual world is in constant motion, and many suffer without understanding that the origin of their problems is not in the physical plane, but in the invisible. Thousands of people around the world wake up with an unexplained weight on their chest, feel watched when they're alone, have recurring nightmares where shadowy figures appear, experience sudden mood changes without cause, feel profound fatigue that no medical exam can explain, and notice that their projects and dreams always encounter unexplainable obstacles at the last moment. These are subtle but powerful signs that spiritual interference is happening. Father Pio, with his profound wisdom, taught that not everything we experience originates only in the physical world. Many of our daily struggles are, in fact, reflections of spiritual battles that we cannot see with the eyes of the flesh. If you feel you need protection, comment now. I am protected by divine light. This phrase has power. It's the first step of your spiritual shield. Words carry energy, and when pronounced with faith and conviction, they immediately begin to alter the energy field around you. Father Pio knew the power of declarations of faith. He said that every word pronounced with true faith was like a sharp sword against the assaults of evil. Do not underestimate the power of your voice when it unites with divine intention. Salt, an element so common in all homes, so simple and accessible, but which Father Pio considered one of the most powerful tools of spiritual protection. In the hands of those who know its secrets, salt transcends its material nature and becomes a conductor of purifying energy. In ancient traditions, salt always represented purity and preservation. Not by chance, ancient Romans paid their soldiers with salt, from which comes the word salary. They knew that salt was more than a seasoning. It was a treasure of protection and value. Father Pio used salt in his blessings, teaching that it had the power to absorb negative energies and purify environments. He told how once he was called to bless a house where a family was being disturbed by unexplainable phenomena. Before even beginning his traditional prayers, Father Pio asked for a container with salt, blessed it, and spread it around the corners of the house. The residents reported that after this simple ritual, peace returned to the home, as if a dark cloud had been dissipated. The protective salt ritual, as Father Pio practiced it, is simple but profoundly effective. You will need a handful of coarse salt, preferably sea salt or Himalayan pink salt, but common salt also works, a clear glass cup half filled with water, and 3 white candles. It's important to perform this ritual at a tranquil moment, when you can fully concentrate, preferably between sunset and midnight, when the veil between worlds is thinner and spiritual energies more accessible. Begin by lighting the 3 candles, arranging them in a triangular format. The triangle is a symbol of divine protection, representing the Holy Trinity. As you light each candle, say with conviction, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I light the light that disperses all darkness." Hold the salt between the palms of your hands for 3 full minutes, closing your eyes and visualizing a bright white light enveloping the grains. This light is the divine energy being transferred to the salt, enhancing its purifying properties. Now, with an open heart and focused mind, add 3 pinches of salt to the water, saying with each pinch, "By the power of the Father, I purify this salt. By the wisdom of the Son, I consecrate this salt. By the strength of the Holy Spirit, I activate the power of this salt." Observe how the grains slowly descend through the water, carrying with them all the protective intentions you've placed in them. Wait 3 minutes in total silence, just contemplating the movement of the salt in the water, absorbing negative energies as Father Pio taught. With the index finger of your right hand, stir the water with the salt clockwise, forming 7 complete circles. While doing this, repeat 7 times. All evil returns to its origin. Nothing can reach me. I am protected by divine light. Feel each word resonating in your being, creating an invisible force field around you. The number 7 is sacred, representing perfection and completeness. Each circle you draw in the water is strengthening your protective shield. After completing the 7 circles, let the cup rest for another 3 minutes. During this time, visualize a golden light emanating from the cup and expanding, first filling the room where you are, then your entire house, enveloping each person living there, each object, each corner. This light is the physical manifestation of your spiritual shield, repelling all negative energies and attracting divine blessings. Quick pause. If you're taking notes, write everything down carefully. Don't skip any detail. Each gesture you make activates an ancient spiritual force. Father Pio insisted on the precision of rituals, teaching that intention alone is not enough. Each step must be followed with reverence and exactness. The power is not just in the salt or water, but in the precise combination of elements, words, and gestures, forming a spiritual symphony that resonates in higher dimensions. With the ritual prepared, you must now use this salt water for complete protection. Moisten your fingertips in the water and make the sign of the cross on your forehead, saying, "My mind is protected against all negative thoughts." Then touch your chest at heart level, saying, "My heart is sealed against all destructive emotions." Then touch your shoulders, first the left, then the right, declaring, "My physical and spiritual body is shielded against all malign interference." Then take some of this salt water in the palm of your hand and spread a few drops in each room of your house, starting from the main entrance and moving clockwise. In each corner of the room, declare with authority, "This space is sealed and protected by divine light. No negative energy can remain or enter here. All evil returns to its origin." Father Pio taught that the corners of houses are points of energy accumulation, where negative vibrations tend to concentrate. By purifying these strategic points, you are cleaning the energy knots that block the flow of blessings. After completing the purification of all rooms, return to the place where you started the ritual. The cup with the water and salt should remain in the center of your home for 3 complete days. During this period, the mixture will continue working, absorbing residual negativities and strengthening the protection field created. On the 3rd day at sunset, pour the contents of the cup into running water, preferably in a river, the sea, or even in the kitchen sink, saying, "Just as this water flows to its final destination, all negative energies are dissolved and transmuted into light. It is done, it is sealed, so be it." The effects of this ritual are profound and multidimensional. In the first 24 hours after performing it, many people report an immediate sensation of lightness, as if an invisible weight had been removed from their shoulders. Environments seem brighter, even without changes in physical lighting. Sleep becomes deeper and more restorative, without the nightmares that previously disturbed nights. There are reports of people who finally managed to dream of deceased loved ones, receiving messages of comfort and guidance that were previously blocked by spiritual interference. On the emotional plane, many experience renewed mental clarity, as if a fog had dissipated. Decisions that seemed impossible now appear obvious. Conflictive relationships begin to harmonize without apparent effort. It's as if a silent language of peace had been established in environments and between people. Father Pio explained that this happens because, by cleaning negative interferences, the Holy Spirit can flow freely, inspiring thoughts of peace and communion. In material and financial aspects, mysterious obstacles begin to dissolve. Opportunities that seemed blocked begin to manifest again. There are numerous cases of people who, after performing this ritual with sincere faith, received unexpected calls with job proposals, favorable resolutions in stalled processes, or inspired ideas that led to new paths of prosperity. It's not magic, as Father Pio always emphasized, but the removal of spiritual impediments that were blocking the natural flow of divine blessings intended for you. Mary Oliver, a devotee of Father Pio, who lived in rural Maine, shared her impressive testimony. For 3 consecutive years, she faced a sequence of inexplicable losses. She lost her job, her health deteriorated, and important relationships fell apart. Doctors couldn't find causes for her symptoms. Psychologists couldn't explain her profound sadness. It was when, on a pilgrimage to San Giovanni Rotondo, she learned about the protective salt ritual from an old friar who had personally known Father Pio. With faith, but without great expectations, Mary performed the ritual, exactly as described. In her own words, "On the first night after the ritual, I had my first peaceful sleep in years. In the morning, looking in the mirror, I noticed that the defeated countenance had disappeared. In 3 days, I received a phone call from a former colleague offering a job opportunity. In a week, medical exams showed an inexplicable improvement in my condition. In a month, my life had completely transformed. I felt as if I had lived for years under a dark cloud that had finally dissipated, and it all began with a handful of salt and a lot of faith." Mary's case is not isolated. In his years of ministry, Father Pio witnessed thousands of similar transformations. He understood that many human sufferings have spiritual roots that modern science cannot detect or treat. The protective salt ritual acts precisely in this invisible but absolutely real dimension that influences all aspects of our earthly existence. Another important aspect that Father Pio taught about this ritual is the need to repeat it periodically. Just as we regularly clean our house, our spiritual protection also needs maintenance. Ideally, perform the protective salt ritual with each change of season 4 times a year, or whenever you feel that the energies around you are heavy again. Especially sensitive people or those who work in environments with many people may need to perform the ritual monthly. When the ritual is performed as a family, its power multiplies. Father Pio considered the family as the first church, the primordial sanctuary where faith is cultivated and strengthened. When all family members participate in the ritual, each contributing with their intention and faith, an almost impenetrable spiritual fortress is created. It is recommended that, in this case, each person in the family adds a pinch of salt to the cup, declaring their intention of protection for the common home. There are specific circumstances when the ritual should be performed urgently. After receiving visits from known negative or envious people, before starting important new projects, when moving to a new house, after periods of prolonged illness, after intense conflicts in the domestic environment, and whenever disturbing dreams or negative presentiments persist for more than 3 consecutive days. Father Pio was emphatic in saying that spiritual prevention is as important as physical prevention for health. The power of salt as an element of protection is not exclusive to Christianity. Ancient traditions around the world, from different cultures and religions, recognize salt as a universal purifier. In Japan, mounds of salt are placed at the entrance of restaurants to ward off bad energies. In the Jewish tradition, salt is used to make meat kosher, removing impurities. This multicultural convergence only confirms what Father Pio always taught. Natural elements carry divine wisdom that transcends religious barriers, speaking directly to the human spiritual essence. It's important to understand that the protective salt ritual does not replace the regular practice of prayer and sacraments. Father Pio saw these rituals as complements, additional tools in the Christian's spiritual arsenal. He himself, even endowed with extraordinary mystical gifts, never abandoned the daily discipline of hours of prayer, meditation, and celebration of the Eucharist. The ritual enhances spiritual connection, but does not replace the direct and personal relationship with the divine. The efficacy of the ritual is also directly related to the purity of intention of who performs it. Salt purifies, but its action is amplified when your hands and heart are equally purified by sincerity and genuine repentance. Father Pio recommended that, whenever possible, the ritual should be preceded by a brief examination of conscience and an act of contrition. This inner preparation significantly increases the potency of the spiritual work that follows. Returning to Mary Oliver's case, she mentioned an interesting detail that many also report. In the days following the ritual, it's common to dream of crystalline water or feel unusual thirst. Father Pio explained that these are signs that the purification process is happening not only in the environment, but also in the person's spiritual body. The water in dreams represents the ongoing cleansing at the deepest levels of being. It's recommended to drink more water than usual in these days to aid the process of energetic detoxification. A variation of the ritual, which Father Pio taught for especially severe cases of spiritual disturbance, includes the addition of 3 drops of olive oil to the cup with water and salt. Oil, a symbol of consecration in biblical traditions, intensifies the sealing power of the ritual. In these cases, after adding the oil, one should trace the sign of the cross over the cup, saying, "By the oil of consecration, this seal is reinforced sevenfold." No force of darkness can break this protection established by divine authority. Another fundamental point that Father Pio emphasized is that the protection established by this ritual is not limited to the physical space of the house, but accompanies the person wherever they go. It's as if it created an invisible energy field that remains around the individual, an aura of light that repels harmful influences. However, for long trips or stays in unknown places, he recommended taking a small bag of salt consecrated by the ritual. This salt can be discreetly spread in the 4 extremities of a hotel room or any temporary environment where you stay. During his years of spiritual service, Father Pio observed that certain people seemed more vulnerable to negative influences: newborns and small children, people in the process of making important decisions, individuals going through grief or separations, the chronically ill, and those who work in professions that deal directly with human suffering, such as doctors, nurses, psychologists, social workers, and curiously, also artists. For these people, spiritual protection is not a luxury, but a basic necessity, as important as adequate nutrition or rest. In the specific case of newborns, Father Pio recommended an adaptation of the ritual. A little of the salt consecrated by the procedure should be placed in a white fabric bag and sewn into the baby's bedding, not within reach of their hands, obviously. Additionally, the salt water can be sprinkled very lightly in the child's room, with special attention to the 4 corners and the area above the crib. One should never apply the water directly to the baby, only to the environment. It is noteworthy that Father Pio observed particularly remarkable results when the ritual was performed during the so-called angelic hours between 3 and 4 in the morning or between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. These are considered hours of special spiritual activity when the veil between the visible and invisible is thinner. However, he always emphasized that faith and intention are more important than timing, and that the ritual maintains its effectiveness, regardless of when it is performed, as long as it is done with sincerity of heart. A curious phenomenon reported by many people after performing the ritual is the appearance of small synchronistic signs, what some call meaningful coincidences. Numbers that repeat, unexpected meetings with people who bring important messages, objects lost long ago that suddenly reappear. Father Pio explained that by cleaning the energy field, we open channels for divine communication that were previously obstructed. These signs are confirmations that we are now more aligned with the flow of divine providence. Another frequently observed effect is a change in the perception of time. Many people report that after the ritual, they feel as if days have more hours, as if time expanded to accommodate their needs. In Father Pio's explanation, this occurs because anxiety, which contracts our temporal perception, is one of the first negativities to be dissipated by the protective ritual. With less negative interference, we experience time more fully and presently. The effectiveness of salt as a protective element has deep historical roots. In ancient Rome, soldiers received part of their payment in salt, hence the word salary, not only for its value as a food preservative, but also for its protective spiritual properties. It was believed that the soldier who carried salt was doubly protected on the physical and spiritual planes. Father Pio frequently cited this historical fact to illustrate how ancestral wisdom already recognized what modern science has difficulty accepting: the energetic and spiritual dimension of natural elements. It is essential to understand that the protective salt ritual, like all of Father Pio's teachings, is not a form of superstition or magic. It is a concrete channel for the manifestation of faith. The power is not in the salt itself, but in what it represents and the faith with which it is used. As Father Pio himself said, "Salt is just the vehicle, faith is the engine. Without faith, salt is just salt. With faith, it becomes a conductor of divine grace." This distinction is fundamental to avoid merely superstitious approaches that empty the spiritual meaning of the ritual. Some of the deepest effects of the ritual manifest in dreams. Many people report that after performing it, their dreams become more vivid, colorful, and meaningful. Messages that previously seemed confused now appear with crystal clarity. Father Pio explained that dreaming is one of the main paths of spiritual communication, often blocked by negative interferences. By purifying the energetic environment, we also unblock this important channel of divine guidance. In moments of particular collective turbulence, wars, epidemics, social or economic crises, Father Pio recommended intensifying the ritual. In these periods, spiritual disturbances multiply, affecting even those who are normally little sensitive to these influences. The accumulation of fear, anger, and despair in the collective atmosphere creates toxic energy fields that can penetrate even well-balanced homes. The salt ritual then serves as a protective barrier against psychic and spiritual contamination from the external environment. An important observation made by Father Pio was that, immediately after the ritual, some people might feel a temporary intensification of discomfort or problems. He explained that this is normal and even expected. It represents what he called a healing crisis. It's like when you clean a wound. Before getting better, it may sting more intensely for a brief period. This reaction indicates that the ritual is working, bringing to the surface negativities that were deeply rooted. Generally, this phase doesn't last more than 72 hours, after which comes a lasting relief. Carl Mendez, an American businessman who learned Father Pio's teachings through a book, shared his impressive experience with the protective salt ritual. After years of an inexplicable sequence of business failures, contracts lost at the last moment, promising partnerships that dissolved without apparent reason, investments that went wrong despite all favorable analyses, he decided to perform the ritual in his office. "I confess I did it with skepticism," reports Carl, "but I was willing to try anything after so much inexplicable failure. I performed the ritual on a Friday night when the office was empty. On Monday, I received 3 calls from former clients wanting to resume projects that had been abruptly cancelled months before. In 2 weeks, I closed more contracts than in the previous 6 months. The change was so dramatic and sudden that I couldn't attribute it to anything but the ritual. Even more impressive was the atmosphere in the office. The employees, without knowing about the ritual, spontaneously commented on how the environment seemed lighter and how ideas flowed more easily. Father Pio frequently associated spiritual protection with openness to divine signs in daily life. He taught that, after the salt ritual, it was important to maintain an attitude of vigilant attention to perceive the small synchronicities that would begin to occur. These signs, which many dismiss as mere coincidences, are actually the divine alphabet, coded messages that guide us on the right path. Protection doesn't just serve to ward off the negative, but mainly to make space for the positive, for the grace that was always available, but that we couldn't access due to interferences. A practical detail that Father Pio emphasized is that the salt used in the ritual should preferably be new, opened specifically for this purpose. Ideally, buy a package of salt on the day you intend to perform the ritual, maintaining the intention of protection already at the moment of purchase. Thus, the salt already begins to be impregnated with the energy of intention even before the formal ritual. Additionally, he recommended that the container used for the salt water be made of transparent glass, never plastic or metal, as glass doesn't interfere with the subtle energies involved in the process. It is notable how, in our era of technological and scientific advances, Father Pio's seemingly simple teachings about spiritual protection remain so relevant. Perhaps because, as he frequently pointed out, material progress has not eliminated human spiritual needs. In many cases, it has even intensified them. The existential emptiness, chronic anxiety, sensation of disconnection, and lack of purpose that afflict so many modern people are, in Father Pio's view, symptoms of a profound spiritual lack, often aggravated by negative interferences that the salt ritual helps to dissipate. Numerous therapists, psychologists, and even doctors who have learned Father Pio's teachings have discreetly incorporated elements of this knowledge into their professional practices. It is not uncommon that, after exhausting conventional approaches with patients who continue suffering without apparent cause, these professionals suggest, in private conversations, practices similar to the protective salt ritual. The positive results are so frequent that many of these professionals, initially skeptical, have become the most ardent defenders of this ancestral wisdom. John Sanders, a respected psychiatrist from Boston, confessed in an interview, "After decades practicing conventional psychiatry, I began to perceive patterns in certain patients who didn't respond to medication or therapy. There was something else happening, something that our current science can't measure or treat. That's when I came across Father Pio's teachings about spiritual protection. Out of professional curiosity, I began to suggest the salt ritual to some of these refractory patients, presenting it as a complementary mindfulness practice. The results were surprising. Improvements that years of conventional treatment hadn't been able to produce. This completely changed my view about the nature of human suffering and the limits of current medical science." It's important to emphasize that Father Pio never proposed the salt ritual as a substitute for conventional medical treatments. He always insisted on the complementarity between science and spirituality. For him, refusing medical treatment in the name of faith was a form of presumption and not of piety. The ritual acts in the spiritual dimension, while traditional medicine acts on the physical plane. Both are necessary for the integral well-being of the person. Another fascinating aspect of the protective salt ritual is its capacity to restore balance in family relationships. Numerous documented cases show how, after performing the ritual in a home where conflicts had become chronic, an atmosphere of understanding and dialogue began to establish itself naturally. In Father Pio's explanation, many family conflicts are amplified by external negative influences that feed on discord and disharmony. By neutralizing these interferences, the ritual allows the natural love between family members to flow freely again. The experience of the Rodriguez family is particularly illustrative. After a new member entered the family through marriage, inexplicable tensions began to arise. The matriarch, a devotee of Father Pio, decided to perform the salt ritual throughout the house without informing the others. On the same day, the son who had shown the most hostility to the new member approached them spontaneously, initiating a friendly conversation. In the following days, the emotional temperature of the house visibly lowered, and relationships that seemed irreparably damaged began to reconstitute. As the matriarch later reported, it was as if a fog of irritability and distrust had been blown away, allowing everyone to see each other again with clarity and affection. An interesting element that Father Pio mentioned in his instructions about the ritual is the importance of conscious breathing throughout the entire process. He taught that breathing is the bridge between the physical and spiritual body, and that breathing deeply and consciously during the ritual significantly amplifies its effects. The specific recommendation was to inhale slowly through the nose while mentally counting to 4, hold the air for 2 counts, and then exhale through the mouth, counting to 6. This breathing pattern, maintained especially during the moments of silence in the ritual, harmonizes subtle energies and increases spiritual receptivity. The choice of moment to perform the ritual also has its importance, according to Father Pio's teachings. He observed particularly potent results when the ritual was performed during the waxing moon, especially in the 3 days before the full moon. In this period, the energies of growth and expansion are at their peak, enhancing the establishment of new protections. However, he always emphasized that in cases of urgent need, the ritual maintains its effectiveness regardless of the lunar phase. Sincere faith transcends astronomical conditions. Perform this ritual today. Don't wait. The energy around you is already moving. The protection you seek is in your hands now. Each moment of hesitation is a lost opportunity for transformation. Father Pio constantly repeated to his followers, "Divine grace does not wait for our convenience." When we feel the impulse to act spiritually, we must respond immediately. The simple fact that you are reading these words at this moment is not coincidence. It's a call, a divine invitation for your protection and liberation. The spiritual universe conspires in your favor, offering tools of light to disperse any shadow. Take possession of this sacred heritage now.